friends, Liron here. Thank you for joining me in another video. Now I'm not with my selfie stick, the Gorilla Pod, but I'm actually with a tripod, and I want to show you what I'm gonna sketch today, okay? So I want to sketch this building. Some of you may recognize it from my Instagram. I actually painted this one just yesterday actually, and I just find its shape very interesting, and it's something I wanted to do. Now go back to me for a moment. I want to try out the new Faber-Castell ones I bought, pens. There you go, can you see them? Good. I want to try out the new pens and just get a feel for them and understand if there's something I want to work with. Currently, most of you know I use the Microns and the Staedtler pigment liner, and I really love the pigment liner, but I'm gonna give these a shot. This is the Faber-Castell. It says Ecco Pigment, I'm not sure what it is exactly. Size 04 and 03. Okay, so sorry about the close-up to my face. I hope you enjoyed this sketching process, and let's get started. Okay, so as you can see already, the new pen. I have a lot of insights from using it in that sketching session, and I will share them after the video as well and while I'm working on it. So the video runs at double speed, and because of the new schedule, I don't really feel the desire to create two videos, for example, time-lapse and narrated version. So what I decided to do is narrate it in the pace that I feel will be the most interesting, and just go with one version that's narrated but still sped up just a bit, and you'll understand why. So what I'm doing now is getting in the basic structure of the building, the main components, the main shape that is very much has to do with the shape of the walls, as well as the shape of the roof, which I will add in just a few moments. There's this awning on the right, and now I'm kind of creating a border caused by the trees. There's a tree on the right and a tree on the left, sort of closing up this scene. Now again, I'm just getting in the general most shapes. I'm not going in with the details yet, and the reason why is that by getting these basic shapes, I can later on come back with the windows and all the other detail, and it will fit in perfectly because I already have a reference to them. I know where to place them in relations to the walls, in relations to other objects or areas that I already put in. Okay, so now trying to get an impression for the shape of the roof. A bit challenging in this angle, and as I mentioned, some of you may recognize this scene from my Instagram account. I did a few stories on this one. I still haven't posted as a post the final painting, but I will. It's interesting because I got mixed feedback about it. Many people loved it and some didn't. Said it was a bit dim, a bit not enough sense of light. I actually felt like there was a lot of sense of light in this one, so I'm not sure what they're talking about, but it's good. It's good that I don't know, because it means I'm actually progressing in some way and trying out new things. But then I decided it would be an interesting subject to tackle as a sketch. And it's very interesting because for sketches I get really interesting reviews as well. It seems like people like my sketches better than my paintings, which is understandable. I have a much more well-defined style in sketching and also a lot more experience. So now you can see how I'm using the lines I previously put, and I know exactly where to put the windows with all the lines that are parallel to the walls and perpendicular to the walls, and it's just much easier when you have this frame of reference. There's this garage entrance at the bottom. Also, I know exactly how to place it. Sorry, there's a few sort of like a barred fence right under the awning. And right now everything is still flat because it's just the drawing. There's no shadows, there's no light, there's no sense of depth. And this is actually the most exciting part, just getting that drawing in there. So I'm just working carefully around it, and every moment I'm sort of attacking a different area or tackling a different area. I had a very interesting experience while working on this sketch, because there was an old man there that was really nice. I sat on a bench, and then the sun started creeping into my sketch, and he just brought me a chair and put it somewhere there and told me, "Here, come sit here in the shadow." And I was really surprised, and turns out he works there. He's like, he brings stuff from the market and he sells them there on the street, so he places them on the benches. So he kind of also wanted me to move from the bench, but also he started explaining to me where the light is, where the shade is, and where I should sit. So it was really nice. And later on, he just came suddenly with a glass of water, cold water, and it was just turned this sketch into a very, very fun experience. So this is some of the adventures you may encounter when you're working outside. Just makes it more fun and interesting, the interaction with people passing by and looking at what you're doing. But more on that later on. Actually, quite a few people talked to me while I did this, so it's interesting. So now I'm putting in again some of the architectural details. This building is very different from all the rest because this is Allenby Street. It's full of stores and shops and like big stores, small stores, business kind of buildings, and this one just looks like a house. There is, of course, this garage entrance in the bottom, and there's something on the right, but it just looked really like a house. So this is why it attracted me initially when doing the painting. So now basically the drawing is done. You can see I started doing the cross-hatching. And right now I changed to the different spot that I told you about because the old man told me. I remember it happened right now. So now I'm marking where the shadows are cast by the wall. The light basically comes from the right and casts a shadow to the left, okay? Now there are a few interesting things that are going on that you will see later on because the trees also cast some shadow on the building. And so this is something to take into consideration as it will affect the final sort of look in terms of light and shadow, and also the shapes of the shadows, because shadows cast by trees are much softer, they have holes in them. You will see just a great sense of light. So now some parts are definitely darker. The thing is they're not nearly dark enough. First off, there's the darkest darks that I need to put in, but also this initial layer kind of will have to become darker. And you'll see me carefully building that up in a few moments. So now I'm shading under the awning, and I am going to negative shade around the fence, which will be a bit of a challenge, so you'll see me do that now. I find that basically like negative shapes, generally speaking, are some of the most challenging shapes there are, because if you don't leave enough white space, you won't get the impression you want. And in this case, I kind of left it in some areas and not in others. Like where I'm working right now, there is enough white space. In other places, there isn't. And you kind of have to work really carefully around it and make sure you get it the way you want it to be. So now I'm shading this top part, which looks kind of like a metal. I'm not sure how to translate it. In Hebrew, we say pach. So it's like a material that's like a very light metal that just covers the edge of the roof. And it's adhering to the light and shadow, of course, in the scene. So the wall facing right will have not as much shadow on that part. Now I'm getting to darken the darkest parts a bit more. So this is basically the glasses of the windows and the areas that are just under the, like this, like the edges of the windows, the areas that are just under the roof. There's a lot of these very dark shadows inside shadows. With cross-hatching and working with pen, is very different, of course, from watercolor. So with watercolor, the way you may want to get these kinds of shadows is using wet and wet, because they're not so clear and crisp in real life. So wet and wet is a great way to mimic them. So what you would do is you'll put in a dark wash, and then you go in with even a darker, stronger paint and put it in there, and then it will merge together and create a beautiful shadowy effect. With pen sketching, you kind of have to work more slowly at it, but you have a little more leeway to mess up in many cases, because you can just build it up line by line and kind of go a little slower. What I like to do is add very rough cross-hatchings inside existing shaded areas, and this creates this sort of a shadow in shadow look, because anything that's in the shadow is less clear immediately. This is why shadows exist. No, not why, but this is their main functionality. They obstruct stuff from our view, and so if you want to check it out, you can just take a picture of something and take a look at the area in the shadow and see how less clear it is and how the photo may be a little more grainy. Even in video, this is true. So this is just something to take note of, which is actually quite freeing, because you have the ability to go a little more wild and not worry too much about messing up. One thing I will mention also in the end of the video is that what I noticed about these pens is that they glide really, really smoothly. They sort of slide on the paper. You feel less of the friction compared to other pens, especially compared to the Micron Pigmas, where I really can feel the sort of yeah, just this touch of the paper's surface. Another thing is the angle in which you hold them. They still keep a very steady line, which is very interesting. I'll give a nuanced point about it in the end, because it can be an advantage, but also a disadvantage. So anyway, adding some details to the windows here. Now I just indicated where I want to leave it as dark as it is, and then I added some shadow around it. Now starting to work on the lower part of the awning. Here's a picture again, just to remind you what it looks like. Probably should shade a larger portion of that very front wall. So I won't shade it as much, but I will add some shadows to it, because there's also some shadow cast by the wall. By the way, a good tip when working outside is to actually take a picture of the reference with your phone or something like this, and then take a look at it for a few moments, and you'll notice, especially if you already started sketching and you do this midway through, you'll notice how the image gets simplified. I don't know why. For some reason, when you look, I think because the picture on a smartphone screen is smaller, you get to see just the gist of it, and so you get to see the dispersion of light and shadow more clearly. You get to just notice everything simplified, as opposed to the scene in front of you, which, because it is in front of you, doesn't have the same effect of being sort of trapped inside a small screen. So take a picture, take a look at it, maybe desaturate it, turn it black and white, play with the contrast, and you'll really get to see maybe where you went a little wrong with your shading and stuff like that. I definitely won't say this is my best sketch. I have a lot of sketches that I'm way more pleased than this one. Because I don't know why. It has to do sometimes with the reference itself as well, and how I interpret it. If I find something interesting in it, and something like this, then I can convey its shape much better. With this one, I found something interesting, which is the shape of the roof, but then as I worked on it, I felt like I'm losing it. You know, I'm losing the touch with the essence of the reference. Now, that doesn't mean the result isn't good. The result is great, I think, but there's this magical X factor that you can see, for example, in the museum sketch I did a while ago of a scene in Paris. This is really apparent there. I forgot the name. Oh, Cluny. Musée Cluny. If you take a look at that video, you will get to see what I mean. Like, the magic of the subject is really shining through. And this raises a lot of questions, because when you look at paintings or sketches or sculptures, especially if you compare and look at old masters' works, which I started looking at recently, you'll notice how when someone is really a master of the medium, there's this sort of magic. And I heard someone talking about saying that it actually kind of gives you a taste of the meaning of life in the most extreme levels, because you get to see the true dedication of genius. And I think this has to do a lot with heavy mastery of the medium you're working at, and really feeling through the work process and doing it very consciously. And so this is just an interesting point to take note of. If you look at works by Leonardo da Vinci and you know, all the classic ones, but also some others that I just recently discovered, and I really want to share with you their names. Actually, this is a good topic for a video. Alfred Sisley, Camille Pissarro, Gustave, I'm not sure how to call it, to pronounce his last name, and Eugene Boudin. These are some of the artists I saw in the Musée d'Orsay in Paris, and it's just the impressionistic artists. They have this magic in their works, and I will make a separate video about them, I think, because it's just so interesting. It's fascinating, actually. So there's this magic, and I feel like I get a taste of this magic when I'm doing these sketches. Not with painting yet, it will come, I'm sure, but with sketches I do feel like I get a taste of this magic, especially with these kinds of spontaneous sketches. But it really has to, a lot of things have to connect, like the reference has to connect for me, and the scene itself, the materials I'm using, where I'm sitting, the mood I'm at, how connected I am to the process. So it's just very interesting, and you can notice it. You can notice when something is
pulled through with genius. And there's a lot of artists that can do that. I don't want to make it sound rare, like just the Renaissance, fathers of the Renaissance could do that. Definitely not. You see this every day with modern artists as well. A lot of the people I follow on Instagram have that magic in them, and it's definitely common. It just needs to be honed and kind of developed. So anyway, what you saw me doing now is I added first a scribbly layer to the trees just to give some texture, and now I'm going back with cross-hatchings to really get them as dark as they should be. Now, usually I go the other way around. First I cross-hatch the trees, and then on top of the cross-hatching I add some texture, some leafy texture, which is basically just random scribbling. This time I decided to do it the other way around, simply because I wasn't sure if I'm going to get them darker or if I want to keep them lighter than the house. And then I came to the conclusion that making them darker will just create a better contrast and separation, so I decided to go that route. Okay, the composition here could definitely be improved. I think maybe just moving one of the trees a little bit, maybe the right one could be lower just to break that sort of even feeling from right to left. A lot of it is a matter of just personal preference as well, so it's very subjective in many cases, so I don't worry too much about these kinds of things, okay? Now this is nearly done. Just gonna add a few more touches to the trees and perhaps some more darker shadows to some of the windows, but this is really almost done. So yeah, all this talk about magic and then art really makes me want to I think I will do that soon. Makes a few studies of some artists that I really liked. I really love the kind of style that says a lot with less details, but still detailed enough. So I don't like too much abstraction, but some level of abstraction is definitely healthy, and I really like the way it looks. So yeah, I think this is why I enjoy rendering stuff in pen. Because it's definitely different from the way the reference looks. So yeah, this is kind of magic. I actually think I will devote a lot more time to pen sketching as well as watercolor, because it seems like there is some natural gift to that in my style. So this is something I just want to experience a little more of. Now strengthening some of the contrast. And now I'm kind of thinking what I should be adding, because it's nearly done. I have all of the details almost I want, and I don't want to go at it too far and maybe ruin some of the impression by adding too many shadows or things that aren't really necessary. So I'm just strengthening some of the roof, and yeah, this one is really close to finish. There are a few shadows that I felt like needed a little more contrast, so you see me darkening this whole left area. It should be darker. Didn't feel strong enough, and you can see how it will improve just instantaneously. The way this left wall reads and looks. So yeah, it's a lot of sort of a game of light and shadow and understanding how strong of a contrast and where the shadows are is also very critical to creating the right impression. And their balance, the whole sort of levels of the, if you use Photoshop, you know what I mean, levels of dark and light and midtones and all of that good stuff, which I like. So now just adding this final shadow cast by the tree, and you can see how it's a little more fluffy, kind of there's light coming through it. This is really important to get the impression right, and to make it feel like it's the shadow of the tree. The tree's casting it. Now again, stronger shadow here, and this is basically done. I just wanted to add a bit more, but decided not to, so I'm just gonna sign it now, and I will show you a better version that's based on a picture I took of this. So here it is, the final one, and the picture. I hope you enjoyed this one.
Okay friends, I changed the angle just so you don't have that disgustingly gray wall behind me. So anyway, this is the final result. I hope you enjoyed the process, and I hope this gives you some new perspective as to how to approach these kinds of sketches. I'm very pleased with this pen. I really like it. I think the main difference that I feel is that there's a bit of noise here. One, it glides really smoothly on the paper, and two, I feel like it creates a beautiful line even if you hold it at an angle to the paper, not just like this, but like that, which is very rare, I think. I actually like to use the fact that the line changes with the angle, so I'll have to see how I get that pen into my normal sketching routine. So this can actually be a disadvantage depending on what you're looking for. I like the kind of sketched look that I have control over the pen. If I move it a bit at a lower angle to the paper and I get this very weak line, I like to use that. But anyway, just a lovely pen. I think it's technically one of the best I used so far, so I really enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to subscribe. Follow me on Snapchat and Instagram. I want to thank you for your comments on the latest video. I was a bit afraid that some people may be disappointed, but I really want to thank you for the support that you've given me, and I will see you again in the next video.